Welcome to this CipherVibe Cloud Security Guide. Today, we will make password authentication security, step-by-step guide for 2026 practical, prioritized, and connected to how real cloud environments are operated. Password authentication is still everywhere, which means small design mistakes can become account takeover paths at scale. This episode explains password login like a senior engineer, enrollment, storage, verification, throttling, reset, recovery, session handoff, evidence, and rollout priorities. The purpose is not to memorize a collection of service names. It is to build a mental model you can apply when accounts, teams, workloads, and threats change. We will define the core ideas, walk through a repeatable security workflow, examine mistakes that frequently create exposure, design useful safeguards, and finish with a practical hardening roadmap. Pause when you need to. Write concepts in your own words, record observations, and distinguish what the evidence proves from what you are merely assuming. That habit is more valuable than rushing through another tool demonstration. Start with 4 concepts that provide the vocabulary for password authentication security, step-by-step guide for 2026. First, a password verifier should prove knowledge without storing the password itself. The server should store a salted, slow password hash, not reversible secrets. Second, registration, login, reset, recovery, password change, and session creation are separate trust transitions that need separate evidence and limits. Third, credential stuffing and password spraying abuse valid login behavior, so defenses must include rate limits, breached password checks, adaptive challenges, and monitoring. Fourth, password reset is part of authentication security, not a side feature. Weak reset links, long expiry, poor email controls, and recovery bypasses can defeat a strong login page. Fifth, passwords should not carry the whole risk for administrators, production engineers, financial actions, or sensitive data export. Use step-up and phishing-resistant MFA where risk is high. Sixth, good password UX reduces insecure behavior, clear requirements, password managers, passphrase support, no forced periodic rotation without reason, and safe error messages. Do not study these as isolated definitions. Ask which asset or business service is involved, where the relevant trust boundary sits, which identity performs the action, and what reliable evidence would show that the control worked. Security reasoning is a chain. Source evidence supports an observation. The observation supports a conclusion. The conclusion informs a proportionate decision. The decision has an owner, an expected result, and a way to verify it. When any link is missing, say so. A professional explanation can include uncertainty without becoming vague. For example, a network record may prove that 2 addresses communicated, but it may not prove which human initiated the action or whether the content was malicious. Now turn the mental model into a repeatable workflow. First, map every password path: sign up, login, password change, reset, recovery, admin login, support-assisted recovery, lockout release, and session creation. Second, verify storage, password hashes, algorithm, salt handling, work factor, migration path, pepper strategy if used, and protection of the identity database. Third, define abuse limits, per account, per IP, per device, per ASN, per credential, per reset token, and per support operator thresholds with careful user messaging. Fourth, design reset and recovery with short-lived tokens, single use, step up where possible, session revocation after change, and logs that link recovery to later actions. Fifth, connect password events to detection, login failures, success after many failures, new device, impossible travel, reset burst, password change, and sensitive action after login. Sixth, test the full lifecycle with normal login, bad password, lockout, reset, expired link, reuse token, password manager flows, MFA enrollment, and emergency revocation. Before acting, define the objective, scope, owner, and success condition. Collect the smallest amount of trustworthy evidence needed to understand the situation. Preserve timestamps and sources so another person can follow your reasoning. Priorities should be explainable. Consider exposure, identity and privilege, sensitive data, business importance, exploit conditions, existing safeguards, reversibility, and confidence. A dramatic label should never replace that analysis. The workflow does not end when a command succeeds, a ticket closes, or a dashboard turns green. Verify the new state with fresh evidence. Check for recurrence and for side effects introduced by the change. This disciplined loop, observe, interpret, decide, act, verify, and learn, appears in every cybersecurity specialty. Understanding failure modes will protect you from attractive but unreliable shortcuts. First, storing plain text, reversible encrypted passwords, weak hashes, shared salts, or low work factors turns one database leak into a user-wide compromise. Second, reset and recovery can be weaker than login, especially when support workflows can bypass MFA, update email addresses, or issue reset links without strong evidence. Third, aggressive lockouts can become denial of service, while weak throttling lets attackers test millions of credentials without meaningful friction. Fourth, error messages, timing differences, and account enumeration can leak which usernames exist or which authentication step failed. Fifth, forcing complex passwords without manager-friendly guidance often produces predictable substitutions, reuse, sticky notes, and frustrated users. Sixth, failing to revoke sessions after password change or recovery leaves attackers active even after the visible password problem appears fixed. These mistakes often share one cause: confusing an available signal with a complete explanation. A tool can report a finding, a successful action, or a score while important scope, context, ownership, and verification remain missing. Also resist copying commands without understanding their inputs, outputs, permissions, and side effects. Run one controlled change at a time and record what happened. If an exercise does not behave as expected, that is useful evidence. Stop, inspect the environment, revise the hypothesis, and explain the difference. Good security work is not a performance of certainty, it is careful reasoning under imperfect information. Reliable security uses layers because no single control can prevent every failure. First, use modern password hashing with unique salts, tuned work factors, secure migration, and protected configuration for any optional pepper. Second, check new passwords against breached password data and reject commonly used, compromised, or context-specific weak passwords. Third, use adaptive rate limiting and throttling that considers account, source, device, network, credential, and reset behavior without creating easy denial of service. Fourth, harden reset links with short expiry, single use, cryptographic randomness, careful logging, user notifications, and session revocation after sensitive changes. Fifth, use step-up authentication for password change, email change, recovery, admin actions, payment actions, and sensitive data export. Sixth, monitor credential stuffing, password spraying, successful login after repeated failure, impossible travel, new device, recovery burst, and disabled security settings. For each important risk, ask 5 questions. What makes the event less likely? What evidence would reveal it? Who can contain it? How will trustworthy operation be restored? Who owns the decision and accepts remaining risk? Least privilege applies to people, applications, devices, automation, data stores, and administrators. Access should be scoped, separated, monitored, reviewed, and removed when it is no longer needed. Every important control needs a test strategy. Include representative normal activity, negative cases, misuse, dependency failure, and rollback. A written policy is not evidence that a technical or operational control works. Finally, preserve the evidence trail from observation through decision, action, and verification. That history supports investigations, audits, lessons learned, and honest measurement. Turn this episode into a practical hardening plan. Start with inventory. Write down every place this authentication pattern appears, who owns it, what data it can reach, where credentials are stored, how it is revoked, and which logs prove normal or suspicious use. Then reduce the biggest exposure first. Remove stale access, shorten lifetimes where possible, narrow scope, protect storage, add recovery or revocation paths, and make sure high-risk workflows require stronger proof. Next, test abuse cases. Do not only test the happy path. Test stolen credentials, expired credentials, replay, reset, or recovery abuse, wrong audience, wrong issuer, missing logs, disabled controls, and emergency revocation. Finally, measure progress with administrator phishing-resistant coverage, credential stuffing attempts blocked, password reset abuse rate, stale sessions after password change, breached password rejection rate. Each metric needs an owner, a reliable source, a review cadence, and a known limitation. Strong authentication security is a repeatable operating rhythm. Choose the right pattern, reduce credential theft, validate every token or session, protect recovery, centralize evidence, secure machine identity, and rehearse response. For chapter markers and primary links, open the description. For more evidence-based cybersecurity research, visit CipherVibe.com and subscribe to CipherVibe. Copyright 2026 CipherVibe. All rights reserved. This briefing is general education. Validate controls with authorized administrators in your own environment.